Frozen, but thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
The webinar is now live streaming, and Madam Chair, I believe we are good to begin this special board meeting.
Okay, good morning, and thank you everyone for attending the special board meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order, and we'll go through some quick introductions. Myself, I'm Mary Creek from Palmyra Farm in Hagerstown, Maryland. Could we just go through the list and everyone chime in and introduce yourselves quickly for us? Steve, you want to take off next and introduce yourself, please?
Very good. Steve McHenry, I serve as Executive Director of MARBIDCO. Welcome, everybody. Charlotte, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Charlotte Davis, Executive Director of the Rural Maryland Council.
Paul?
Paul Geringer, Extension Specialist at the University of Maryland.
Jen He?
And he came Associate Dean and Associate Director for University of Maryland Extension.
Mark?
Mark Krebs, Secretary Treasurer of MARBIDCO and Executive Vice President CFO of Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Wayne?
Good morning, Wayne Richard, Regional Vice President of Ag Lending for Horizon Farm Credit.
And Deputy Secretary Conley?
Steve Conley, Deputy Secretary, Maryland Department of Ag.
And members of my team, Allison?
Allison Rowe, Financial Programs Officer.
Bill? Say hello, Jill. Tina?
Hi, Tina, Senior Accounting Coordinator, MARBIDCO.
And John Jay, you've joined with the name Tina Wilkins. You must be using her.
I am. She helped me out this morning to get in. John Jastrzemski, Professor Emeritus, Forestry, Davy Tree Expert Company.
Great. And Joe Kabatko is there. I don't know if she's able to speak or not. Okay, we're going to move on, Madam Chair.
All right. We need to make sure that we've established a quorum, please. I think, Tina, would you take care of that, please?
Sure. So I've got Steve Conley, 1, Mary, 2, Charlotte, 3, Paul, 4, John J, 5, Jen He, 6, Mark, 7, Wayne, 8, and did I miss anyone?
Don Darnell's here.
And Don. So we have 9.
Very good.
Have a quorum.
Great. All right. The next item on our agenda, and we'll try to move through here at a nice pace, is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I know they've been posted, and the board, of course, has gotten copies of those. Are there any questions or adjustments to those minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as posted.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we're going to turn the meeting over to Steve McHenry. He's going to give us some updates on the legislative session and the state budget, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The legislative session is winding down. It actually ends at midnight this coming Monday. As far as MARBIDCO is concerned, we are pretty much done at this point in terms of the issues that we were actively engaged in. I want to start with a brief report on the budget. I'm delighted to tell you that Governor Moore put all of the budgetary items that we requested in his budget submission, and the General Assembly has now completed its work on the state's operating budget, and everything we requested has been incorporated and approved, including the request that we made of the General Assembly to take 6 million of the extraordinarily large one-time lump sum contribution towards our next generation farmland acquisition program. The General Assembly has permitted us to take 6 million of that and use it towards our core loan programs this year, including particularly the Mr. Biff loan program, which, as you all know, has been very well utilized over the last 14 months or so because of the very high interest rates that are currently businesses are currently experiencing because of what's going on with the Federal Reserve action. So very good news on the budget, and things that we're also interested in, including the RMC's funding. They're fully funded at not only the 9.1 million that they had requested, they received an extra $300,000 for a rural health transportation initiative. The Maryland Market Money Program at MDA is fully funded at the new level of 300,000, and that now is going to the new Farm Foundation, which we have spun off, which you all are aware of. So the state budget is looking very, very good. I will tell you, and I previously sent you a note about this, that the state had to write down the revenue estimates by just under $500 million for the coming for the end of this fiscal year and going into fiscal 24. So the legislature has made some adjustments there, but there's quite a healthy state reserve fund approaching $2.9 billion that's been established, and the legislature has forward funded some K-12 public education funding. So despite the revenue write-downs, the state budget is looking quite good, and the situation is well under control. So unless there are questions, I'm going to move on with the other legislative items that we were actively involved with this year. Last session, we co-led an effort to help establish a statewide urban ag grant funding program. The legislation almost passed. It died on the last night of the session, wanting a final vote in the Senate. And the bill was reintroduced. It was tweaked. Since the introduction of the bill in the prior year, MDA has made tremendous progress in getting ready to better serve urban farm operations, both commercial and non-commercial operations. So House Bill 152 was introduced. We supported it. We offered an amendment to have both the new urban ag grant fund program as well as another bill that passed last year establishing an urban ag water and power infrastructure program at MDA. That program is going to be launched in July. The new ag fund program doesn't have funding, so it's going to take another year for that to happen. But we had offered an amendment to redefine the eligibility area to include not only urban areas as established by the U.S. Census, but also to include areas within incorporated municipalities, so incorporated cities and towns. All the geography within those communities, as well as in census-defined urban areas, will now be covered under the bill, and that actually conforms to MARBIDCO's Urban Ag Lending Incentive Grant Program service territory, as it were. So all of the urban ag grant programs, both for commercial farm operations and non-commercial farm operations, will be serving the same geography. And that bill, House Bill 152, passed final passage yesterday. So that legislation is done and is on its way to the governor's desk. Another bill, cross-file bills we were involved with, added originally invasive species to the Certified Local Farm Enterprise Program for purposes of participating in the state's 20% local food procurement goal. The bill does still limit it to the invasive species, including particularly the blue catfish. They changed the name of the program to the Certified Local Farm and Fish Program, took out invasive species out of the title. But that legislation has now passed all the way through and is on its way to the governor's desk. We did offer an amendment to move up the effective date to July 1st, which was incorporated. The reason for that is, as you know, we administer the Certified Local Farm Enterprise Aggregation Grant Fund program. So we would theoretically be able to make grants beginning July 1 for activities that would be eligible relative to blue catfish aggregation activities related to wholesale and institutional markets. So we would, and we have funding in the budget for that, as you all know, for that program next year. So good news there, everything moving forward as previously described to you. And then finally, a bill that took up a tremendous amount of time for us this session was Senate Bill 433, which, as introduced, would have created a loan program for minority and women oyster farmers. And as you all know, the Attorney General's office advised that bill was unconstitutional, as violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. There is a workaround for that as a result of a Supreme Court decision known as City of Richmond versus Croson, where a governmental entity can undertake a disparity study, and if the study comes back showing there's been a historic disparity, then there can be preferential treatment pertaining to certain disadvantaged groups. So we spent a lot of time developing a program that would pass constitutional muster related to beginning oyster farmers. And rather than having a new loan program created, we would have a new grant program created and provide additional funding for our existing Shellfish Aquaculture Financing Fund program. So we proposed that, and we worked very closely with Dr. Matt Parker at the University of Maryland Extension in developing the projections for how that would work. Unfortunately, the cost of oyster shell today is really driven up the cost of folks wanting to get into oyster farming. And to begin a 15-acre bottom culture oyster farm operation today would cost in the neighborhood of $400,000, including the acquisition of a workboat. So it's pretty hefty price tag. We had developed a program so that there would be up to a $100,000 grant, which would then be matched with 3 $100,000 loans, $100,000 each year through our regular Shellfish Aquaculture Financing Program. So we had proposed that we could administer that if the authorization was given for the new grant program, as well as the additional funding for our existing loan program. As it turns out, we were informed by the Maryland Department of Transportation, which handles the disparity study, sometimes called a Croson study, for the state of Maryland. They have quite a backlog of Croson study requests, and the earliest a Croson study could be conducted for shellfish aquaculture, for the shellfish aquaculture industry, was September of 2025. So with that information, and given a fairly large price tag for an individual operation to be started, the General Assembly, I think, has just decided to wait on that, study it, over the summer, and take another look at this next year. So that legislation is not moving forward at this time. That's my update on the legislation that we were directly involved in. Happy to take any questions about any of those bills I talked about. All right, seeing none, Madam Chair, is it okay to move on to the next item? Okay.
Now I have it right. Go ahead, Steve, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. We have two major discussion items today that we want to take up. The first deals with the approval of the conversion of our Mr. Biff direct loan program to become a loan participation program. And we talked about this extensively at the last meeting. The MARBIDCO Programs Committee had taken this up previously, and you asked at the last meeting that they do a little more work. Farm Credit was particularly interested in seeing if the new loan participation program could be converted in such a way as to be very similar to the direct loan program relative to the subordination of MARBIDCO security interest in the collateral security that would be offered. And just to recap for you, right now, MARBIDCO works with commercial lenders on financing, let's say, a farm purchased by a beginning farmer. And the bank or the Farm Credit Association makes a loan, and they're in a senior lien position on the collateral security that's being offered. MARBIDCO also makes a loan and takes a junior or subordinate lien on the collateral security that's being offered. Well, as we learned from the other states, there's some variation as to how they're dealing with this issue of first lien versus subordinate lien. The Minnesota Loan Participation Program is a first lien offering, which is typical of most loan participations that are done by commercial lenders all the time. They're typically a first lien scenario that's being offered. But in Kentucky, we learned that a subordinate lien is how they're running their loan participation program. So what we've done, and the programs committee discussed this at the last meeting, is they're recommending now approving the offering of our loan participation program with our contribution to the project being offered on a subordinate lien basis. The programs committee is recommending that, and you all have a write-up on that that you can refer to. So with that said, I think where we are is we are recommending moving forward with this approach. I would say generally that the credit risk that we would be assuming with this subordinate lien model versus the first lien model that we previously discussed is that our credit risk would be probably in about the same position we're in today. We noticed that in the Minnesota program, and they've been offering this since 1988 or 86, excuse me, very few loan losses with their loan participation program, and they've done many participations. Kentucky has been doing this for about 20 years, and they've had very few loan losses as well. But many of their loan participations, which again are on a subordinate lien basis, are done with loan guarantees also associated with the lending. So we're moving forward with the expectation in Maryland that some, but not all, of the loan participations that we would do would have loan guarantees. And the reason for this is that getting an FSA loan guarantee on a loan takes a considerable amount of time here in Maryland, we've come to learn. So we're going to plan to move forward as we pretty much have, and we will sort of feel our way along on how much credit risk we're assuming with a loan participation in a subordinate lien position without a loan guarantee associated with it. So basically, we'd be just where we are now with the current direct loan program moving forward under the new design. We have spent a tremendous amount of time on this. We've had an internal staff task group that has been meeting weekly. Many members of the staff, Stacy, Allison, and others have been spending a lot of time, and myself included, on going through all the details associated with this. We've been working with our Assistant Attorney General on the implementation of this. We've scheduled a meeting next week with Minnesota to walk through the finer points of how they handle their program. I'm also scheduled to meet with the FSA State Director next week to talk about what FSA would require in terms of the beginning farmer loan guarantee option that we have built into the new loan participation model. So you have the draft application form, you have the write-up. In the write-up, there are numerous highlighted areas. The yellow are the changes from the draft you saw previously, draft number 4, and then draft number 5 in green highlights the changes that have been made since draft number 4. So I am very happy to take any questions. Wayne, if you have anything you want to add to the discussion here, please chime in. I will tell you that we have a meeting scheduled with the Delaware Department of Agriculture, including Secretary Skuse, next Tuesday to talk about this model, because Delaware is very interested in adopting an approach similar to Maryland's once we move forward with our loan participation model. Wayne, any additional comments or any questions from anybody?
I don't have a ton of additions. I know internally at Farm Credit, we are working through, figuring out how we're going to make all this work on our side too. We certainly see a path to getting it done. It's just a matter of, crossing the I's and dotting the T's and getting a bunch of attorneys involved, which is always fun and interesting. But no, I actually have a call with our finance people later today on the same thing. So we're moving on our end as well.
And Wayne, I should tell you, our Assistant Attorney General is reviewing the Master Loan Participation Agreement now. I hope to have the comments back from them. And as soon as we have sign off from them on that, I'm going to send it over to you all to review as well. So.
Okay. And I haven't told you either. I got the one from Kentucky, which was the same thing you already had, Steve. Yeah. So I guess that is all they're going off of.
Yeah. And what we did is we blended Minnesota's and Kentucky's agreements. So we put them together. So you'll be seeing that as soon as the AG signs off on it.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, questions? This is a pretty significant change for us. There are many small details, including how do we handle the equity incentive grants that we have in 8 counties with funding from the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission and the Upper Shore Regional Council, and how do those get worked in? So there's a lot. There's actually a lot that's going into this, but hopefully once we get all this sorted out, our lives will be rather easier in this office going forward. Getting there is going to be a challenge, and I really want to thank my staff for everything they've been doing and will be doing to accommodate this change. All right. Well, Madam Chair, I think it's probably time for a motion.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion about the program, the new participation program?
And Madam Chair, I would add to that, you all by straw poll had also raised the maximum large project cap to $1 million, which also includes the maximum outstanding indebtedness from any single MARBIDCO borrower. That would be part of this motion, I think.
Okay, you want it together and not separately?
Right, because that's how we've drafted the application form.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we approve the new Mr. Biff loan participation program and the raising of the large food fiber project cap to 1 million.
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on this? Any other questions? This big project and lots of changes. Okay, Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Should we go ahead and do this with audio, Steve, or do you want the hand
think-
raised thing?
Yeah, I
or-
think you could just raise your hand or say aye, and probably with Zoom, it's the best thing to do is if there's a negative, ask for the negative. Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see hands coming up. There we go. And I hope that Jill can keep track of these, right?
Yeah, and I'm assuming that Faith and John are also in the affirmative.
Yeah, Mark has the real hand up,
Yeah.
so,
Actually, I am a negative on this.
Oh, you're a negative on this. Oh,
okay. Would you like that noted, John, that you're a negative?
Sure.
Okay. All right, the motion is passing. We do have one negative, and we'll note that in our minutes.
okay.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Moving on, Madam Chair.
Yes, please. The next item is an update on the action on the meat processing loans and the MARBIDCO livestock grants.
All righty, and everybody has received from me, excuse me, everybody's received from me an update concerning our USDA meat and poultry intermediary loan program application for a grant. We had asked for a grant of 3.8 million to set up a new revolving loan program for meat and poultry projects. And we were approved, but only for half the amount of funding we requested. So we had asked for 3.8 million. We were going to make a $1.3 million matching contribution towards the USDA funding. We have to set up a special bank account. It has to be administered in a particular way that USDA requires. So it's going to create a little bit of an administrative burden for the staff. But unfortunately, we were only awarded about half of what we asked for. So our matching requirement has been reduced to 653,000, which we would have to match from our core program funds. So our recommendation is to go ahead and take the USDA grant, match it with the $653,000. We had contemplated using some of our livestock processing equipment grant funding, which, as you all will recall, we have $500,000 in the FY23 budget and another $500,000 in the FY24 budget. Given the fact that we're only going to have to contribute half of what we thought we were, I'm recommending that we take that $500,000 in actually FY24 livestock processing grant money and put that in as a matching equity contribution for the livestock processing loans. So I sent you a draft application form, and my recommendation to you all is that we really use the special USDA funding to try to stand up one new livestock processing facility. This would be a large animal red meat type processing facility in an underserved part of the state. And that we also try to stand up one new blue catfish processing facility somewhere in the state. As I think you all know, the blue catfish is just a major, major problem facing Chesapeake Bay right now. This invasive species is proliferating at a very rapid rate. They are eating many juvenile blue crabs and juvenile rockfish, which is having a serious impact on those very valuable commercial species. And so, and of course, the governor recently declared the Chesapeake Bay a blue crab disaster area and is seeking federal assistance for that. So my recommendation is to accept the USDA grant of just under 1.9 million, put in the required match, set up this new loan program, and target it to receiving applications that would relate to the construction of new facilities. One targeted to large animal livestock processing, and the other targeted to blue catfish processing. So under the design that I am proposing, we would make a loan of $1.2 million to an eligible applicant. We would tailor that loan with a 20% grant, assuming there's also a 10% equity contribution from the borrower, which would provide a total of $1.44 million in financing for the eligible livestock processing activity. I think that really is the essence of it, and I'll go ahead and explain the other part of what I want you to approve, and then you can act on both items, either separately or together. We would have another $500,000 available, and in this case, this is the money we currently have available in the FY23 budget. If you take out the funding we would need for administration, we would have $465,000 available to award in grants. And my recommendation is to establish a livestock processing equipment grant program with grants not to exceed $50,000 for USDA inspected facilities and $30,000 for custom exempt facilities or mobile facilities. That would be offered on a matching basis, a 50-50 basis to eligible applicants. And that we would basically model this in the way that we offered the relief program, livestock processing grant program a couple of years ago. So, and that we would offer that almost immediately using FY23 money. So those are the two things that I'm presenting today relative to livestock processing. One, establishing a new loan program for using the USDA money, standing up 2 new processing facilities with the matching grant money to go along with that, and then the separate livestock processing equipment grant program. Is that clear? And are there questions?
Okay, so we're looking for a motion on that project.
I make a motion to approve what Steve said.
That cover both elements?
Both elements.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All right, that was nice. And we can have any further discussion? Okay, we don't hear any. I think it's probably best if we go with the hand raising again, just to make sure that we're all accounted for. So raise your hand if you're in favor of the current motion. Okay.
I see 9 hands.
All right, then that means we've passed that motion. Are there any objections?
I see 10 hands.
Okay, it doesn't appear that we have any objections, so the motion carries for that project. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is any further announcements. Steve, do you have anything else?
I don't have any anything else at this point. Does anyone else have anything they want to share at this time? Okay. Well, we do have a request from an applicant for project funding, so we would need to go into closed session.
Okay. And do I have a motion to move to go to closed session?
I'll move. Go ahead.
I make the motion to go to closed session.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Can somebody read the motion from the agenda?
To consider matters that concern proposals for a business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state, and to adjourn the meeting thereafter.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. And we had a second with that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye.